I woke up my alien roommate by mistake, now she's out of control. The accidental awakening. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before Adrian Foster as he gazed through the reinforced viewport of the shuttle. Nebulae and distant stars shimmered like jewels against the cosmic canvas, but his attention was fixed firmly on the approaching marvel of engineering, Celestial Academy, the premier research space station in the quadrant. The station loomed larger with each passing moment, its sleek metallic spires and interconnected modules forming a structure that dwarfed even the largest earthbound skyscrapers. Holographic advertisements flickered to life along the outer hull, displaying a kaleidoscope of alien and human languages promising everything from exotic cuisines to cutting-edge technology. Adrian's heart raced, a mixture of excitement and trepidation coursing through his veins. At 26, he had left behind everything familiar on Earth for this opportunity to study xenobiology at the prestigious Galactic Institute housed within the station. This floating metropolis, home to countless species from across known space, would be his new home for the foreseeable future. As the shuttle docked with a gentle thud, Adrian gathered his modest belongings. He'd packed light, bringing only essentials and a few cherished mementos from home. The decontamination process was swift but thorough, leaving him slightly dizzy as he stepped onto the main concourse. The sheer diversity of life forms bustling about the station's interior left Adrian momentarily stunned. Tall, willowy beings with iridescent skin brushed past stocky, four-armed creatures carrying what looked like living, pulsating data pads. The air itself seemed alive with a cacophony of sounds, melodic trills, guttural growls, and the occasional burst of laughter from a group of human tourists. Adrian fumbled with his holomap, trying to locate his assigned living quarters. A translucent assistant materialized beside him, its form flickering slightly. "Welcome to Celestial Academy, Adrian Foster," it chirped in an oddly cheerful voice. "Your accommodation is located in Residential Sector 4, Module B. Would you like me to guide you there?" "Yes, please," Adrian muttered, grateful for the assistance. He followed the hologram's projected path, weaving through the crowds and trying not to gawk at the architectural marvels around him. Gravity lifts whisked beings up and down translucent tubes while hovering droids zipped by carrying packages and messages. As they entered the residential sector, the bustle of the main concourse faded, replaced by a more subdued atmosphere. The hologram led him to a nondescript door, chiming softly as it announced their arrival. "Here we are, Mr. Foster. Your palm print has been registered in the system. Simply place your hand on the scanner to gain entry. Is there anything else I can assist you with?" Adrian shook his head, and the hologram blinked out of existence. Taking a deep breath, he pressed his palm against the cool surface of the scanner. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a modestly furnished apartment beyond. He stepped inside, the lights automatically adjusting to a warm, welcoming glow. The main living area was open plan with a small kitchenette off to one side and a workstation nestled in a corner. Two doors led off to what Adrian assumed were bedrooms. As he set his bags down, one of those doors slid open. Adrian felt his breath catch in his throat. The being before him was undeniably alien, yet hauntingly beautiful. Tall and lithe with skin that seemed to shimmer with a subdued inner light, the creature regarded him with large, pupilless eyes of the deepest violet. "You must be Adrian," the alien said, its voice a melodious whisper that seemed to resonate within his very bones. "I am Nalara. Welcome to our shared domicile." Adrian cleared his throat, suddenly acutely aware of his rumpled appearance after the long journey. "Nice to meet you, Nalara. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Nalara's expression remained neutral, almost eerily so. "Your presence causes no disturbance. I trust you will find the accommodation satisfactory." With that, she glided back into her room, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Adrian let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His roommate was a Terrian, one of the most enigmatic species in known space. He'd read about them in his xenobiology texts, beings of extraordinary perception and ability who lived in a state of perpetual meditation. But the texts hadn't prepared him for the reality of sharing living quarters with one. The following weeks proved to be an exercise in adaptation. Nilara was present yet somehow not. She moved through the apartment like a ghost, barely acknowledging Adrian's existence. Her daily routine seemed to consist of long periods of meditation interspersed with brief moments of activity. She consumed strange, glowing fruits that pulsed with an inner light and spent hours staring at what looked like a swirling vortex of energy contained within a crystalline sphere. One evening, as Adrian pored over his notes on Jovian microorganisms, he decided to make an attempt at conversation. "So, Nilara," he began, his voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet apartment, "what brings you to Celestial Academy?" Nilara's gaze slowly shifted from her energy sphere to Adrian. There was a long pause before she spoke. "I am here to observe." Adrian waited for her to elaborate, but no further explanation seemed forthcoming. He pressed on, determined to break through the wall of silence between them. "Observe what, exactly? The station? The different species?" "All things," Nilara replied cryptically. "The ebb and flow of energies. The patterns of existence." Adrian furrowed his brow, trying to make sense of her words. "That sounds interesting. Is it part of your culture's practices?" Nilara tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question. "It is our way. We watch. We learn. We maintain the balance." The conversation, if it could be called that, left Adrian with more questions than answers, but at least it was a start. As the days turned into weeks, he found himself growing accustomed to Nilara's quiet presence. There was something oddly comforting about her constant state of calm, a stark contrast to the chaotic energy of the station beyond their walls. Adrian threw himself into his studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity. His coursework was demanding, requiring late nights bent over his holotext and experimental setups. It was during one such night, as he worked on a particularly challenging project, that everything changed. The assignment was to create an energy supplement tailored for deep space travelers, something that could provide a sustainable boost without the crashes associated with traditional stimulants. Adrian had been experimenting with various compounds, trying to find the perfect balance. As the station's artificial night cycle deepened, Adrian's eyes grew heavy. He'd been working for hours, tweaking the formula and running simulations. The latest batch sat on the kitchen counter, a vibrant blue liquid that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Just a few more tests," Adrian muttered to himself, fighting against the growing urge to sleep. He stumbled to his feet, intending to put the mixture away safely, but exhaustion clouded his judgment. As he reached for the container, his hand knocked against it. The vial tipped, spilling a small amount of the liquid onto the counter. Adrian cursed under his breath, quickly righting the container. He grabbed a cloth to clean up the spill, but in his haste to contain the mess, he forgot to seal the vial properly. Too tired to continue, Adrian shuffled off to bed, leaving the unsealed container on the counter. As he drifted off to sleep, he was unaware of the faint shimmering vapor that began to rise from the open vial, filling the air with an otherworldly glow that seemed drawn toward Nilara's closed door like a tide responding to an invisible moon. A small part of Adrian's mind, the part still clinging to scientific rationality, knew he should be documenting this, studying the effects of his creation on Terrian physiology. But a larger part was simply overwhelmed by the implications of what he was witnessing. "Nilara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "what exactly is happening to you?" She turned to him, her eyes now swirling pools of cosmic energy. "I'm becoming what I was always meant to be, Adrian. And it's all thanks to you." She extended her hand toward him. "Now, shall we dance among the stars?" Adrian knew he needed help, and fast. The next morning, he sought out Professor Ortega, his xenobiology instructor and the station's leading expert on non-human consciousness. "Let me get this straight," Professor Ortega said, leaning back in her chair after Adrian had explained the situation. Your experimental energy formula has awakened dormant abilities in your Terrian roommate, and now she's experiencing some kind of accelerated consciousness expansion. That's putting it mildly, Adrian replied, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Last night she started manipulating gravity in our apartment. My coffee mug has been orbiting the ceiling fan for hours. Professor Ortega's eyes gleamed with scientific curiosity. Fascinating. The Terrians have always been mysterious, even to those of us who've studied them for decades. This could be groundbreaking research, Adrian. With all due respect, Professor, I'm less concerned with research right now and more worried about Nilara. And, well, the structural integrity of our living quarters. The professor nodded, her expression growing more serious. Of course. From what you've described, it sounds like your formula has triggered a state similar to what the ancient Terrian texts refer to as cosmic awakening, a heightened state of consciousness their ancestors were said to possess. It's been considered mythological until now. So what do we do? Is there a way to reverse it? Professor Ortega considered this for a moment. I'm not sure we should reverse it, even if we could. This could be an evolutionary step forward for her species. But we certainly need to help her control these new abilities. Before Adrian could respond, his communicator chimed with an urgent message from the apartment security system. Anomalous energy readings detected in residential sector 4, Module B, maintenance has been alerted. That's my apartment, Adrian said, already on his feet. We need to go. Now. When they arrived, the scene that greeted them was both beautiful and alarming. Nilara floated in the center of the living room, surrounded by a swirling vortex of light and energy. Every object in the apartment, furniture, books, Adrian's research equipment, orbited around her in perfect harmony. Nilara! Adrian called out, stepping carefully into the apartment. Her eyes opened, those cosmic pools focusing on him. Adrian! And you've brought a friend. How wonderful. I've been experimenting with the fundamental forces. Did you know gravity is actually just a suggestion? Professor Ortega stepped forward, her scientific curiosity clearly overriding any sense of self-preservation. Remarkable. Nilara, I'm Professor Ortega. I specialize in xenobiology. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions about what you're experiencing? Of course not, Nilara replied cheerfully, gesturing gracefully. The orbiting objects settled gently back into their places. I find human curiosity delightful. So direct, so passionate. It's one of the things I admire most about Adrian. Adrian felt his cheeks heat up as Professor Ortega shot him a knowing glance. Yes, well, he said quickly, we're concerned about the intensity of these changes, Nilara. We want to help you control these new abilities. Nilara drifted down until her feet touched the floor, her expression becoming thoughtful. Perhaps you're right. I've noticed certain fluctuations in my energy field that I can't fully regulate yet. It's like learning to breathe underwater, possible, but requiring careful adaptation. I might have an idea, Professor Ortega said. The Galactic Institute has been researching meditation techniques that bridge different species' neurological patterns. Adrian, with your understanding of human physiology and your connection with Nilara, you might be the perfect partner to help her develop control. Adrian looked between the professor and Nilara, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. But as he met Nilara's gaze, those incredible eyes now filled with hope and trust, he knew he couldn't refuse. All right, he said, nodding firmly. Where do we start? The unexpected rival. The following weeks transformed Adrian's life in ways he never could have imagined. Each morning began with what Professor Ortega called quantum meditation, a hybrid technique combining human mindfulness practices with Terrian energy manipulation exercises. Adrian would guide Nilara through breathing patterns while she taught him to visualize energy flows. To Adrian's surprise, he found himself not just teaching but learning as well. There were moments during their sessions when he could almost perceive the energy fields Nalara described, brief flashes of awareness that extended beyond his normal senses. "You're making remarkable progress," Professor Ortega told them one afternoon in the specialized laboratory she'd arranged for their training. "Nalara's energy output is stabilizing, and Adrian, your biometric readings show interesting developments in your frontal lobe activity." Nalara beamed, the subtle glow beneath her skin pulsing with pleasure. "Adrian has a natural aptitude for energy work. For a species with such limited perception, humans have remarkable adaptive capabilities." "Thanks. I think," Adrian said with a chuckle. As they left the lab, Adrian realized how comfortable he'd become in Nalara's presence. What had initially seemed alien and intimidating now felt natural, even comforting. The way her energy seemed to harmonize with his, the subtle changes in her luminescence that reflected her moods, he was attuned to her in ways he couldn't quite explain. "I'm starving," he announced as they entered the main concourse. "Want to try that new Centaurian fusion restaurant? I hear they use actual gravitational fields to layer the flavors." Nalara's eyes swirled with delight. "I would enjoy that very much. Their energy signatures are quite harmonious, from what I've sensed passing by." As they turned toward the restaurant district, Adrian froze. Walking directly toward them was a face he hadn't seen in over a year, one he'd crossed galaxies to forget. "Adrian? Adrian Foster, is that you?" "Veronica," he managed, his voice suddenly tight. "What are you doing here?" Veronica Reed, his ex-girlfriend and former research partner, looked exactly as he remembered, confident, poised, and undeniably beautiful in her crisp researcher's uniform. They'd ended things badly when she'd chosen a prestigious position on Europa over their relationship. "I transferred to the Xenolinguistics department last month," she explained, her smile faltering slightly as she noticed Nalara. "I sent you a message, but I guess you didn't get it." "I've been busy," Adrian replied, acutely aware of Nalara watching this exchange with intense curiosity. "I see that," Veronica said, eyeing Nalara with professional interest. "You must be Adrian's roommate. I've heard Terrians rarely interact with other species." "How fascinating." Before Adrian could intervene, Nalara stepped forward, her eyes beginning to swirl with increasing intensity. "You share a history with Adrian. Your energy patterns intertwine with his in familiar ways." Veronica blinked, clearly taken aback. "I'm sorry." "Your molecules remember his," Nalara continued, floating slightly off the ground as her control slipped. "But there's dissonance. Pain. You hurt him." "Nalara," Adrian warned quietly, noticing the subtle distortions beginning to form in the air around them. Veronica's scientific curiosity visibly battled with her discomfort. "Is she reading my aura or something?" "Something like that," Adrian said, placing a gentle hand on Nalara's arm. He felt the familiar electric tingle as their energies connected. "Nalara, remember what we practiced. Center and ground." To his relief, Nalara closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, they had returned to their normal violet hue. Her feet settled back on the floor. "I apologize," she said with surprising formality. "I'm still adapting to certain emotional stimuli. It was inappropriate to analyze your quantum signature without permission." Veronica looked between them, her expression unreadable. "Well, this is unexpected. Adrian, I'd love to catch up sometime when you're free." Her emphasis on the last word wasn't subtle. "Sure," he replied noncommittally. "I'll message you." As Veronica walked away, Adrian felt a curious mix of emotions. Once, seeing her again would have thrown him into emotional turmoil. Now, he felt oddly detached, as if that chapter of his life had been closed more thoroughly than he'd realized. Your heart rate increased by 7.3% during that interaction, Nalara observed as they continued toward the restaurant. Yet your energy signature remained stable. You no longer desire partnership with her. Adrian laughed despite himself. You know, most humans consider it rude to monitor someone's vital signs without asking. Is it? Nilara asked, genuinely curious. How inefficient. How do you properly assess emotional states without biometric data? We muddle through with words and facial expressions, Adrian replied dryly. And no, I don't want to be with Veronica anymore. That ended a long time ago. Nilara was quiet for a moment, processing this. The concept of romantic exclusivity is peculiar to me. Terrians traditionally form energy bonds with multiple compatible entities simultaneously. Adrian nearly tripped over his own feet. Are you saying Terrians are polyamorous? If that term means forming deep connections with multiple beings, then yes, though not in the physical sense humans understand romance. It's more an intermingling of consciousness. She paused, looking at him with curious intensity. Does this concept disturb you? Adrian considered this as they entered the restaurant, with its spectacular view of the nebula beyond the station. Not disturb, exactly. It's just different from what I'm used to. As they were seated at a table where dishes floated in gentle gravity wells, Adrian found himself wondering why he was even contemplating Terrian relationship structures. It wasn't as if he and Nilara were. Were they? The idea should have seemed absurd. Cross-species relationships were rare and complicated. Yet something about Nilara called to him on a level beyond physical attraction. Their conversation was interrupted by a station-wide announcement that echoed through the restaurant, "Attention all residents of Celestial Academy. The annual Interspecies Cultural Exchange Festival begins in 3 days. All residents are encouraged to participate in this celebration of diversity and cooperation. Registration for performances and demonstrations is now open." Nilara's eyes lit up with excitement. Adrian. We must participate. I could demonstrate the cosmic dance forms I've been practicing, and you could explain the science behind our quantum meditation techniques. Adrian felt a flutter of panic. I don't think that's a good idea, Nilara. Your abilities are still unpredictable sometimes, and a public demonstration could be risky. Her face fell, and Adrian immediately felt guilty. The genuine enthusiasm in her expression had been replaced with disappointment. But, he continued, unable to bear her sadness, maybe we could attend together? Experience the festival as visitors first, see what it's like. Nilara brightened immediately. Yes. A cultural reconnaissance mission. Perfect adaptation strategy, Adrian. As they enjoyed their meal, Adrian's dish a fascinating play of flavors that changed depending on which gravity well he dipped his spoon into, and Nilara's a luminescent concoction that seemed to respond to her energy field, he couldn't help but notice how different she was from the reserved, almost robotic being he'd first met. She laughed, she questioned, she expressed wonder at everything around her. The awakening had transformed her, bringing forth a vibrant personality that had perhaps been dormant beneath the surface all along. Later that evening, as they practiced more control exercises in their apartment, Adrian found himself watching Nilara with growing fascination. She had created a small model of their solar system that orbited above her palm, each tiny planet moving in perfect harmony. Could all Terrians do this once? He asked, mesmerized by the miniature cosmic ballet. Nilara nodded, her concentration unwavering. According to our oldest records, yes. Before the Great Quieting, an event in our history when we chose to subdue our abilities in favor of observation and contemplation. Why would your people give up such incredible gifts? Her expression grew thoughtful, the tiny planets reflecting in her eyes. Our abilities once caused great suffering. Some Terrians manipulated reality for selfish purposes. Wars were fought on scales you cannot imagine, battles that tore reality itself. The decision to quiet our powers was born of wisdom and remorse. Adrian watched as she carefully dissolved the miniature solar system, the particles of light fading back into the air. And now? Do you regret being awakened? Nilara looked at him, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't quite name. How could I regret experiencing the universe as it truly is? Feeling its currents, hearing its music? She moved closer to him, her energy field brushing against his awareness. How could I regret knowing you as I do now, Adrian Foster? Adrian's heart raced as she reached out, her fingers hovering just above his chest. May I? She asked softly. He nodded, not entirely sure what he was agreeing to but trusting her completely. Nilara placed her palm gently over his heart. Immediately, warmth spread through his body, followed by a sensation of expansion, as if his consciousness was stretching beyond the confines of his physical form. For a brief, breathtaking moment, he saw himself through Nilara's perception, a complex lattice of energy, thoughts, and emotions, beautiful in its intricate humanity. This is how I see you, she whispered. Not just flesh and blood, but a symphony of energy and consciousness. When she withdrew her hand, Adrian felt simultaneously more grounded in his body and yet somehow expanded beyond it. Words failed him, so he simply covered her hand with his own, their fingers intertwining. Outside their window, the vast nebula glowed purple and blue, stars twinkling like distant promises. The station hummed with life, thousands of beings from across the galaxy living, working, and learning together. And in that moment, Adrian realized that however alien Nilara might be, what he felt for her was one of the most human emotions of all. The festival is in 3 days, he said finally. We'd better perfect those control techniques before then. Nilara smiled, and the room seemed to brighten in response. With you as my teacher, Adrian, I believe I can master anything. Little did they know that the festival would test that confidence in ways neither of them could possibly anticipate.